Good morning, everybody. My name is Miss Amanda, and I work at the Lincoln County Public Library. And welcome to Online STEM. So STEM stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math. And today we are going to do a science experiment all about the ocean and ocean layers. And we're also going to talk about density as well. So we are going to make an ocean density column, which is pretty cool. I'm really excited about this. So we're actually going to take several different liquids. We're going to stack them all up on top of each other. And we are going to see how they layer because they have different densities. So when we are going to be doing and each layer is going to represent a different ocean zone, a different zone of the ocean, because our ocean is actually made up of different layers, starting at the very bottom where things are really dark, going all the way up to the very top of the ocean, the part that most of us get to see. So we're really excited to be doing our ocean zone density column with you guys today. So we have several materials that we're going to be using for our density column. And these are all items that are pretty easy to come by. When I post a link to the activity, you'll see that we changed ours just a little bit based on some of the materials that are available right now. So, and there's also all sorts of different density columns that you can do. Ours today, since we're going to be talking about the ocean and the different layers, we're going to have five different items in our density column. So, all right, we will go ahead and get started. And this kind of goes along with the story hour that we did last week. So if you want to take a look at that, we did ocean story time last week. So, all right, we can talk a little bit today about what kinds of animals might live in the different layers. So we're going to start with the trench zone. And so we're going to start with a glass. So we're going to have a glass, and this is what I'm going to make my density column in. So I have a glass, and we're going to start with our trench zone. And so I'm actually going to start with some honey for our trench zone. So what you're going to need for this is honey. You're going to need some corn syrup. You're going to need some water. You're going to need some dish soap, blue dish soap, because blue is the color of the ocean, or whatever color you have would probably work, and clear or anything. And then also some canola oil, or vegetable oil. All right, so you're going to also need a different bowl for each layer. So this is just the one that I've already used. So I'm just going to reuse this bowl. So the first thing I'm going to do is pour in my honey. And different experiments will tell you to use different amounts. I'm just going to put it all in this cup right here. And so the experiment guide I'm using says 3/4 of a cup. So that's roughly about how much I'm going to use of each item. So I'm going to go ahead and pour in some honey into my bowl. And like I said, we're going to use about 3/4 of a cup of each of the different items. So I'm pouring that in. And we are going to then, you're also going to need some food colors today. So we are actually going to be using red and blue and green food coloring today. So this first layer that we're making is called the abyss layer. It's called the trench zone. And the trench zone is the darkest part of the ocean, and it's at the very, very bottom, deepest part of the ocean, and it's going to be really, really dark there. So we're going to pour this in. Okay. And then we're going to add a drop. And when I did this before, I realized that if you add too much food coloring, it's kind of hard to tell the difference between your layers. So we're going to add a drop of red, a drop of green, and a drop of blue food coloring in there. And then just mix it all up. So drop of green. And this is our abyss layer, so it's okay. I'm sorry. This is our, I keep saying layer. This is our trench zone. So we are going to make it pretty dark. So it's okay. This is going to be the darkest layer that we have. And as we go up, each layer is going to be a little lighter, and each layer is going to be a little lighter. It's going to be a little less dense. So the densest thing we're working with today is honey, and the least dense thing that we're going to be working with today is our canola oil. So I actually ended up putting 2 food coloring drops because I do want to make sure that you can tell the difference between our trench zone and our abyss zone. And the goal of this is to make it look black. That looks pretty black to me. Yeah. So you are going to pour this into your cup. Now, I will remind you guys that when we do science, we do not taste or eat our science. So make sure that you are not, even though this honey smells very good, we are not going to be eating our science. All right. So here's my cup, and I'm going to go ahead and pour this in here. And this is going to be the very bottom. Look how dark that is. The very bottom, darkest part of the ocean. All right. Do you guys have any favorite animals that live in the ocean? I have 2 of my favorite animals. They both live in the ocean. I really like manatees, and I really like sea turtles. But neither one of these animals live in the trench zone. All right, so there's our trench zone. Now we're going to make our abyss zone. So when we make our abyss zone, we are going to be using our corn syrup. So corn syrup is a little less dense than honey. So here's our trench zone. And I'm going to put in some corn syrup into our bowl here. And like I said, the instructions we're using say about 3/4 of a cup, but it depends on the container that you're using to make your ocean in. So you might use a little bit less if your container isn't as big. So I'm using a little bit less because I'm just using this cup right here. So, and we've got 5 layers. So, all right. So we're going to put in for this one, this is our abyss zone, and our abyss zone is going to have a little bit of a purple color to it. So we are actually going to use our blue and our red to make purple. So I'm just going to add in 1 drop of blue and 1 drop of red. There we go, to make our purple. And we're going to mix, 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 mix. And what I have found doing this experiment is that when you are putting it together, sometimes you can't see the different zones really clearly, but if you take a light and you shine it behind it, you can see the zones really, really well. So when we take a look at this, when we're all done with it, if we can't see our zones really well, then we'll put a light to it so you can see even better. So, okay, here we go. This is our abyss zone. see if you guys can see how the corn syrup is less dense than the honey. And so instead of mixing, it's sitting right on top. I think we're gonna need to get that flashlight so you guys can see that. Let me put this in here and then I'll get my flashlight so you guys can see. Here we go. You guys can see how the two layers are actually separated. Let's see here, my big flashlight. All right. And you can see, let's see. Oh, well, I might have to take a picture if it doesn't work well on the camera. Oh yeah, you can, hang on. There we go. You can see the two layers are separate. You'll be able to see it more and more as we add our other layers. So our next layer is actually going to be our dish soap. And like I said, if you don't have blue dish soap, you can use a different color of dish soap. We want to make this layer look a little bit green. This is called the midnight zone. So it's going to look a little blue, a little green. So we're going to put in our dish soap into our bowl. And like I said, you need to use a different bowl for each one of the different layers. Here we go. Put some dish soap in there. And we're going to add just a little bit of the green food coloring to this one. So far we have a trench zone and a bisque zone, and this is going to be our midnight zone. So we're going to add a drop of our green food coloring and get that all mixed up. So far we've used honey and we've used corn syrup, and now we're using dish soap. And as you mix the different items, you'll be able to tell that the more dense the ingredient is, the harder it is to mix up. But this is much less dense than the corn syrup and the honey, so it's easier to mix up. And sometimes when you mix it up, you get some bubbles too, so that's kind of fun. All right, so we are going to pour in. Here we go. We're going to pour in. Oh, can you guys see that? It's just sitting right on top. It's not mixing. It's sitting right on top of the last layer because the soap is less dense than the corn syrup. Get all that in there. All right, the next thing we're going to add is a little bit of blue water. So water is even less dense than our soap. And it's very important that when you're putting this together, if you put a density column together, that you are putting them together in the correct order. Because if you don't, then the items that are more dense, they're heavier, they're going to sink down to the bottom if you try to put them on the top. So it'll get all crazy. All right, so right now we have honey and corn syrup and soap, and we are going to add in our water. So here I just have some water. The instructions also say to use a funnel, but I don't have a funnel, so we aren't going to use a funnel, and we're just going to be a little messier, and that's okay. And we're just going to clean it up. So you can always improvise if you don't have all the things that they say that you might need on the instructions. So, okay. So here is, I'm just going to add in a drop of food coloring there. All right. And we're going to give that a mix. All right. And so this is our next ocean zone. And this is called the twilight zone. Twilight zone. All right. So we're going to add that in to our density column right here. And like I said, this might be a little messy, and that's okay. So we're going to pour that in. Oh, it's a little messy. That's okay. That's okay. All right, so that's our twilight zone. And the very last zone we have is called the sunlight zone. And so for our sunlight zone, we're going to use some canola oil. And we're just going to pour a little bit of that into the top of our density column. So here's our density column. Oh, there we go. You can see how down here it's so dark, and as you're getting to the top, as you're getting to that sunlight zone in the ocean, it's getting lighter and lighter. And you can see how our soap is not mixing into our water because our water is less dense than our soap. All right, and so we are going to add in our very last layer of the ocean, and our very last layer of the ocean is called the sunlight layer. You also might get kind of sticky when you're doing this experiment too. All right, so here's my canola oil. All right, and we're gonna put it in the very top and see what happens. Oh, can you guys see that? Look at that. It's staying on the very top because oil is less dense than water, and it's less dense than soap, and it's less dense than honey, and it's less dense than corn syrup. So it stays on the very, very top. I'll show you that again. All right. So here is our density column, and it represents the zones of the ocean, which is so, so cool. So we have our trench zone, our abyss zone, our midnight zone, our twilight zone, and up here at the very, very top is our sunlight zone. So what's really cool about all these zones is that most of the creatures that live in the ocean, where do you think they live? Do you think maybe they live here or down here? You know what's really cool? Most of the creatures, the animals and plants and everything that lives in the ocean, it all lives right up here in the sunlight zone. All right, I'm going to get out my flashlight again and show you guys how the sunlight goes down into the ocean. Oh, yes, good question. So if you do not have canola oil, you can use vegetable oil. Absolutely. Good question. All right. And so here's my handy flashlight, and I'm going to put it down into the top of my ocean, and look how much light. That's why that top layer is called the sunlight zone, because look how much light that part of the ocean gets. But look down here. Is there much light? Is there much sunlight getting down to the bottom of the ocean? No. That's why not many things can live down there, because there's no sunlight that gets down there. It's really just a tiny little bit of sunlight that gets down there. And this is a cool way that you can see the top 3 layers of the ocean, because you can see that we've got, look at our layers right there, 1, 2, 3. And when you give them some sunlight, look at that. Yeah, that's why lots of plants and animals can live in this top sunlight zone, but not very many animals or anything can live very down in the bottom in the trench and the abyss zone, because it's so dark. It's so dark down there. Now, I will tell you that if you look up some animals that live down deep in the ocean, there are some really cool animals that have adapted to living down in the very deep parts of the ocean, but there's not very many of them that do. But there are some really cool animals, some cool fish and things that live down in the darker parts of the ocean. But most of the animals and plants and everything live just right in the very top part of the ocean. They don't go all the way down to the bottom. Also, when you go down to the very bottom of the ocean, it gets really cold. It's really cold because the sunlight doesn't get down there to warm it up. So right up here is so warm and nice. Well, it depends on where you are. But it can be so nice and warm, and all the plants and things are growing, and all the animals, lots of animals live there too. So, all right. Thank you guys so much for joining us today for our ocean zones density column here on our online STEM. We appreciate you guys joining us today. And I'll put a link in the comments with the activity that we used today. We did change it up a little bit. We added honey at the bottom to be our most dense item because we didn't want to put rubbing alcohol at the very top. You'll see they used that in the experiment, but rubbing alcohol is an item that is needed in other places right now, so I didn't want to include that in my science experiment. So you will see that it's a little bit different because we've taken the rubbing alcohol out and we've added honey at the bottom. But it's pretty much the same, and it tells you all about the different ocean zones. And then I'll also leave a link to another density column that you can try out as well, and it uses some different items in there too. So thank you guys so much. Thank you, Patricia. Thanks for joining us. We really appreciate everybody being here with us today. Glad that you guys learned a lot. We really love being here with you guys for online STEM. So we hope everybody has a great day, and we'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.